Hello, and welcome to Catholicism in the Car. My name is Parker Zerba. Alrighty, everybody. Good morning, everybody. I think that's Michael from The Office. That's one of his lines. My wife loves The Office. 1 year for, I think it was her birthday. Maybe it was Christmas. I bought her the box set of the entire series of The Office, and she's like, "This is the best gift you've ever given me." It's not roses. It's not all lovey-dovey stuff. It's the box set of The Office. I love it. So she loves The Office, and actually for this podcast, we've had to really limit our amount of streaming time. So we haven't been using the normal streaming platforms like Disney Plus or YouTube or Netflix, any of those other ones, very much, because she was willing to make the sacrifice, and I was obviously willing to make the sacrifice. But because of the podcast, and especially the videos that I'm making, the ones on YouTube, it takes a lot of our Wi-Fi data every month in order to do all those uploads. And we were like hitting our max on our Wi-Fi, so I think we only get like 200 gigs a month or something for Wi-Fi. So we said, okay, we got to cut back on the streaming. So we've been watching a lot more DVDs of things, which has been fun. And yeah. So I think it's been really good. It's been good stuff. All right. I want to continue our discussion on the 3 cardinal virtues, the virtues of faith, hope, and love. And in our last installment, we talked about the virtue of faith. Then we took a break and we talked about the nature of animals, the beasts, as opposed to human beings, because I had my dogs in the car with me, and I thought that would be fitting. And so now we're going to hop back on to talking about the virtue of hope. And then next time, the plan is to talk about the virtue of love. So, and as I discussed in the past episode on faith, faith and hope, I think, are often used synonymously. Like someone will say, I have faith that God will bring good out of this situation. Well, in that sense, you're actually using that term, you're using faith with the meaning of hope, right? And then, I guess on the flip side, somebody might say, I have hope that God exists, something like that. So, which could be meant with a true definition of hope, but also they could be meaning it with a definition of faith, meaning like I have faith that God exists. I take that leap. All my rationality is pointing me towards the fact that God exists, and then I'm taking that leap in actually believing it, right? And again, like I talked about last time, our faith is not to be blind faith. We're not to have blind faith. This is a faith aided by reason, aided by our experiences, and then ultimately faith is, I would argue, an act of the will. Ultimately, it's taking that little jump from saying, okay, it makes sense to me that, God would exist, let's say, for example. I see all the arguments. I have had maybe some personal experiences that have helped me along the way. And then now, I'm just taking that leap of faith to say, yes, God does in fact exist. And I think with virtually anything, that we do, faith is necessary. So even for an atheist to say, well, it appears to me that God doesn't exist, and I'm not convinced by the arguments for God's existence, they have to then take a leap of faith, basically, to say, well, I don't think God does exist. Because there are certain bits of reality and like philosophy that we can't know for sure, for 100% sureness. Even, there are people I've talked about in the past that believe in solipsism, which is the idea that all of reality is just a construct of my mind and it's not real. So, like, as I'm driving down the road, the signs I see, they're just a construct of my mind. The clouds I see, the grass I see, the road I see, the cars, it's all just a construct of my mind. So, in that sense, like, everything is a leap of faith for the solipsists if they're basically saying, well, all my appearances are all the appearances are deceptions, right? And I just have faith that for some reason it's all going to work out. Okay? So yeah, I don't think faith in that sense is escapable. I don't think we can escape it. It's really like an ever-present reality in human life. No matter whether you're a theist or an atheist or a Christian or a Muslim or a Buddhist or a Hindu or whatever you might be, faith is something that is always going to be necessary to one extent or the other, because there are limits to our knowledge. We cannot have 100% certainty on everything. Or some may argue we can't have 100% certainty on many things even. So, alright, but how does hope play into this? I would argue that hope, also has a human and a divine sort of aspect to it. I can be hopeful on a human level, hopeful that my business partner will follow through on their agreements, and fulfill their contracts, right? That's a hope that I can have, a hope that someone will do something even though they are not absolutely obliged to. I think that's a decent definition of hope. Even for supernatural or divine hope. I have hope in God, meaning I have hope in God's mercy, right? Because, strictly speaking, He does not need to be merciful to me. I'm a sinner. I have committed, even if I've committed the smallest transgression against God, the divine, He is not bound by justice to give me mercy, right? And the reason this is because any thing that we would consider a sin against God is actually a rift or a break in reality, and thus it's, in a very real sense, it's a break in God to a certain degree. Like it's a relational break in God, and anything that, God being the ultimate infinite, the ultimate eternal, the eternal one, right? God being the eternal one, if there is any sort of break or rupture or even imperfection that is introduced into God, and God being ever present, God being in everything, by His creations, upholding everything in existence, anything that is done that would break with reality in some way is also a break with God. If I destroy God's creation needlessly, as we talked about last time in our episode on animal realities, right? If I destroy one of God's creation needlessly, just out of malice, especially, then that's a rift in reality and in God's creation, and thus in a very real way in God Himself. Not God per se, but an injury to what God has created is also an injury to Himself. In the same way that an injury, if I break a potter's work of art, his pottery, that's an assault against the potter and not just the pot, right? It's kind of a more basic example there, so that's why even like the smallest infractions or ruptures in God's creation. This is why it's so important to take care of God's creation, but also to love your neighbor as yourself, because your neighbor is part of God's creation. It's one of God's creation, and not only one of, but the most beloved of God's creation, because they're another human being. So even the smallest infractions against God's creation, or especially against God per se, if I'm doing something to hurt God as Himself, that is definitely a much graver sort of an infraction, a sin, right? A break in reality, because I'm intentionally trying to hurt my Creator. That brings forth an injustice in the world, in reality, against the infinite, the eternal one. And any sort of imperfection or break in the eternal one is therefore an eternal break, an eternal rupture, an eternal sin, right? We have, even for our smallest sin, we have no right to mercy, because they have injured in a way the divine reality, God. They have injured the eternal one, and therefore that's an eternal injury that cannot be healed save by that eternal one Himself. So, think about it. If I break an infinite line that's going forever, if I break it, that's an infinite break. I've broken what it is. Even if it's just in one spot, I have broken what that line is. I've broken the nature of that line as itself being an eternal line. And so therefore, only something with eternal power would be able to heal an eternal break. And this is the whole concept of, why God needed to become man, why the incarnation needed to happen, why justice, really. It could only be God who could heal the break that humanity had made. And it was also only humanity that could ask for the forgiveness of God and receive that healing. So if God was the only one that could heal this eternal break, and humanity was the only one that could ask for forgiveness, you would need some sort of combination of divine and human in order to make that sort of reconciliation, right? And this is the argument of St. Bonaventure. You can find it in his Breviloquium. I think it was part 4 on the Incarnation. You can find this sort of an explanation by him there, that this is why the Incarnation was necessary, even, and fitting, he says, because of the nature of the sin that was committed, by the very nature of sin itself, right? Now I guess that would be a tangent, and I don't want to go on any more tangents here. So I'm building this kind of tower for you guys, so you can see what hope is, why hope is necessary, why we need the mercy of God, and why it is that even the smallest sin, smallest infraction, does not deserve mercy. Strictly speaking, it doesn't deserve mercy. Okay. this is why I have hope, and all of us should have hope in God's mercy. And I think that's the primary the primary reason for the virtue of hope is the hope in God's mercy. I can have all kinds of hope for many different sort of things, many material things. Hope that someone's going to come through on a business transaction or a contract, whatever it might be. I can even have hope in God in certain things that aren't necessarily godly. Like I can have hope in God that maybe He will give me a new car. That would be a very immature sort of thing to hope in God about, and a very really imprudent thing to hope in God about, because God has no reason to give me a new car unless I absolutely needed it for some reason. But I think I'd be hard pressed to say that I would absolutely need something like a new car. But anyway, so like I can have hope in these, not like it's like an imperfect sort of a hope, right? But the most perfect kind of hope, I would argue, would be the hope in God's mercy, knowing that He is good, and that even though strictly by justice He is not required to show me mercy because of the transgressions that I have committed against Him, He does show me mercy because of His goodness and His love. So yeah, I think that those are really good things to think about, discuss amongst yourselves. Sorry, I'm laughing because it's just funny, like running a podcast and you're trying to talk to people like you're talking to a group of people, but there's nobody in front of you. I'm just sitting here in my car talking into a microphone. Now, hopefully, people listen to this episode, but you're not obliged to. Have mercy, right? I have hope that you will listen to this episode. Yeah, I think that pretty much does it for thoughts on the virtue of hope. Again, like I think I could do a much more deep dive into these, but these are I'm just giving it off the top of my head here. I know St. Thomas Aquinas in his Summa Theologica has some really good tractates, you could say, on the cardinal virtues. So you could, feel free to look those up. I know that there have been many, many commentaries done on the cardinal virtues throughout Christian history. Pretty sure Augustine has some writings specifically dedicated to them. Who knows what else? So, all right. Thanks, y'all. I will see you guys next time. Oh, and don't forget, you can find me on YouTube, on any podcast player except for SoundCloud. You can find the Catholicism in the Car podcast on. You can find it on our website, CatholicismInTheCar.com. You can also support us on Patreon, or Anchor.fm has a support page. Those would be monthly subscriptions. You can also give us a one-time donation on our GoFundMe page. All of that you can find at the support page on our website. There are direct links there that you can use. Feel free to email me at parkerzerbaughcatechesis@gmail.com. My email is on our website, CatholicismInTheCar.com. It's also in every show note. If you're looking for any sort of links, you can find those links in the show notes of any of our episodes, either on YouTube or on any of the podcast websites. So, yeah, good stuff, good deal. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you have any ideas for future episodes. And please let me know if you guys want more video podcasts. It takes quite a bit more time for me to do them. I would need to purchase a pretty big SD card, I think, for my phone so that I could actually store the videos. I don't have a lot of memory on my phone. So, it just require a little more of me to do that much more regularly. So, if that's something you would like to see, though, again, feel free to support me on any of those options on our support page. And, let me know. All right, guys. Have a good day. Oh, real quick, please feel free to subscribe to any of my podcasts on any of the podcast players. Find me on YouTube. Please subscribe. Like me on Facebook, like the Catholicism Car channel on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all there. Catholicism Car. And then I also have a Patreon account if you wish to support what I do at this podcast and this YouTube channel. And you can also support us on Anchor.fm. There's a support button there you click on. I also have links to all this on my website's support page at www.catholicisminthecar.com.